Hi, everyone. It is Rachel from Rachel Reads, and I'm here with three amazing authors. Bethany Neal, who is the author of My Last Kiss. I have Andrea Hannah, who is the author of Scars and Stardust, and Amy Plum, who is the author of a duology, After the End and Until the Beginning. So hello, ladies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. So the first question I'm going to ask you, each and every one of you, is to give the audience a synopsis of your book. So Amy, we'll start with you.
Okay. These are my two books, After the End and Until the Beginning. And this is the one that just came out in May, so this is the latest one. The books are about Juno, a 16-year-old girl who has grown up post-World War III in the Alaskan wilderness with a clan of about 30 people. And they live off the land, kind of trying to hide from these post-apocalyptic Mad Max-style brigands. One day, Juno goes out to hunt, and she comes back to her clan and discovers they're all missing. So she goes to search for them, and little by little, as she leaves the territory that she's never left before, she starts seeing signs of civilization until finally she comes to this major city, Anchorage, and discovers that there never was a World War III, and her whole life has been a lie. So she has to go search for her clan and try to discover the secret that they've been hiding for the last 3 decades while being chased by 2 different factions.
That's intense. That's intense. All right, Andrea, what about you?
Here's of Scars and Stardust. Can you see it? It's a psychological thriller, and it's set in a small town, middle of cornfields in Ohio, kind of a claustrophobic place that has this legend about wolves, and people disappear and young kids disappear, and they end up finding their bodies out in the cornfield, and nobody has ever seen any of these wolves except Claire and her younger sister Ella. And one night Ella goes missing, and Claire goes on this journey to find her, but all of these things start happening where her parents send her out of town to Manhattan without telling her what happened to Ella, and she finds her way back to the town and meets up with her old best friend Grant, and together they try to solve the mystery of the wolves and what happened to Ella.
Awesome. Beth, what about you?
My book is behind me because my name tag thing, I blanked and I couldn't get to work. But it's called My Last Kiss, and it's a mystery and a love story. The main character is a ghost, and she's trying to solve the mystery that surrounds her death. So, and it's told out of order, so it's a non-linear storyline. So every chapter is a spoiler, and it's just a really fun read and lots of ghost kissing.
Well, we have a question right off the bat by Karen. So the question that she asks is, which character do you enjoy writing the most? And this time, Beth, we'll start with you.
I love writing the really messed up characters for some weird reason. They're just more fun to write because they're so much more complicated. If you're just sort of a happy-go-lucky person, I don't think you have as many layers as someone who's, constantly having trouble. So in My Last Kiss, for me, I would think it's sort of a tie between Madison and Caleb because they're both pretty messed up. But I really loved writing Caleb's chapters. He sort of has a soft spot in my heart, so I would say Caleb.
What about you, Andrea?
So in every book I've ever written, I always end up, my boy characters always end up kind of the same because I love to write the really sweet, nerdy kind of guy, the opposite of Beth, basically. I like to, those like guys that need to push up their glasses and they're a little quiet, but they're sincere and sweet and kind and have a lot of really unique layers and hobbies that they like to do. And I always try to write a bad boy, but they like slowly through revisions generate or start to migrate. That's what I was looking for, towards sweet and soft and my husband's like that, so I think I just kind of go that way. I'm trying something different this time, but like I can't. I don't know. I love the sweet nerdy guy.
You're
I do
probably
too.
setting a way better example than I am. So.
Aw.
All right, Amy, your turn.
And could you repeat the question? Is it what type of characters we like to write, or what our favorite character we wrote?
The question is, which character do you enjoy writing the most? But you can answer it by which type or
Okay.
which specific character.
That's such a hard question, and a lot of people will ask as well, who's your favorite character in the book? And you're like, you're asking me to pick a kid, one of my own kids? It's not fair. So I like writing people who are funny, who have a sense of humor. I really like writing dialogue. So for me, somebody who has a sense of humor is my favorite person to write. And in this duology that we're talking about now, the After the End duology, I really like writing Miles because he has a really funny sense of humor, and it's a very dry sense of humor. And I like writing a character and having them catch me off my guard, and he made me laugh the whole time. So I think that's probably my favorite type of character to write. Somebody with a sense of humor, somebody who engages me and makes me laugh.
All right, and we have another question. This is from Nicola, and she asks, is it a hope for one of your books to ever be made into a film? Andrea, we'll start with you this time.
I mean, I think always, right? Like, anything that I create, I would love to see it go everywhere that it can possibly go. But I also know realistically that doesn't happen to a lot of books. So what I've learned recently in publishing is to kind of let go of any expectations whatsoever, because there have been lots of things that I thought wouldn't do well at all, different projects that did great or people were really receptive to, and then there are things that I thought would do really well and they didn't, and I just can't, like I have no control over that. So yeah, in my mind I'm always like, that would be really cool, but I kind of just write what I want to write now and then cross my fingers and hope for the best.
All right, what about you, Beth?
I have a much more less healthy approach to it. I mean, I love movies. I mean, you can see behind me, I have movies, not books. So I love both, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that's always been my dream since I was, 7 years old. I've always wanted, something that I wrote to be made into a movie. So I've always loved that, and I'm always, poking my agent about that, and she always laughs at me when I do. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure if it happened, it would blow up in my face. I mean, we've all seen movies from books that we love that are just, they fall short. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise that it hasn't happened yet. But.
Yeah, maybe, but you never know. You never know. It could be the next Hunger Games.
Yeah, oh, I know. I mean, that just like Andrea said, in publishing, there's no telling what's going to be a success. You can't even try to predict that. So, yeah. I mean, I would love to. I mean, I would never say no. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, Amy, your turn.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it's one of the questions that everybody wants to know. I think readers have gotten into the habit of seeing books made into films more and more. Right away, if something's visual to them or something's exciting or they fall in love with characters, they really want to see it as well as read it. And it's true that, as Andrea said, so few books are actually made into films or TV shows. And so it's kind of that win the lottery type of thing. Everyone's always like, when are you going to make it into a film? When are you going to make the Die For Me books into a film? We have no control over that. I just want to tell everyone out there, we have no control over it. We have no control over who's chosen to play the parts. Even though, in my mind, for a few of my characters, I actually did think of somebody. Most of my characters, I see them, and then I would have to think, okay, who could play their part? Because I don't start out with an actor in mind. Although I'm writing a book right now, and I started out with Skarsgård. What's his name? That cute Swedish guy that was
from True Blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Skarsgård. Is it Alex Skarsgård or?
Yeah, it's Alex, I think.
Okay, yeah. And when I was looking for a character in one of my books, I thought, I want somebody who looks just like him. So I printed out his picture, and that is my character. But that's very rare. But yeah, I think all of us would be so excited to see our books on screen, and especially if we're movie lovers. And yeah, I am definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually brings up a really good point. Andrea or Beth, do you guys do the same thing? Do you know actors that might be playing, that you want to be playing one of your characters in a movie?
Go ahead, Beth, because my answer is going to be long.
Well, I actually recently lucked out because I had picked a boy to play Ethan. Like, I was sort of casting the movie after I wrote the book as like a blog thing. And now he is on Teen Wolf, and I watch that show religiously. So I get to see Ethan every day. His name is Cody Christian, I think is his name. But he got like super buff to be a werewolf in Teen Wolf, and so it's like this weird crossing of worlds for me every Tuesday or whatever day it's on. So definitely him. I did cast Cassidy on accident. I was watching. It's a movie with Endless Love. That movie. The girl who's the main character in that is Cassidy, if she had brown hair. So I sort of cast after the fact. I don't know why. I sort of, in my perfect world, I'm like, oh well, the movie comes after the book, so I have to write the book first, and then I can cast it. So those are probably the only two that I've actually like actively cast though.
Awesome. So this is where I get weird and superstitious, but I notice that when I write, I need to be really focused on my draft, and so I cut out all TV and movies and even other books because I tend to steal from other places unintentionally. Like I'll notice that the draft is taking a shift towards something that I've been reading, or characters start like in the middle of the draft looking differently than I thought that they would. So for me, it's a little superstition, but I always kind of try to rely on the picture in my head, basically, and what I can come up with on my own. And honestly, if I'm going to cast anybody, I sometimes cast from like real life without telling them. Like I'm writing a character right now. I'm not actually good at writing funny guys like Amy, and so I know one of my friends is adorable and hilarious, and I've known him since high school, and so I think of him personality-wise when I write dialogue. But I don't, and I try to combine people, but I don't do any kind of like casting with actors or pictures or Pinterest or any of that stuff because I rely on it too heavily. I kind of want to see what I can come up with on my own and not make it cliche. Now, some people are really good at doing that, like, and they get inspiration from that. I'm just like a stealer, so I don't do that.
You write in the dark too, right, Andrea? Did you say that?
I know. I've got lots of weird habits. People are around. I do. I write in the dark and I write with noise canceling headphones on. Even if I'm not listening to music, I just don't want to hear anything. And I write in the dark in my bed or on my couch that's behind me and covered in clothes. And yeah, I can't write on my phone. I know some authors do that. They write on the go. I know some people can write anywhere. I can't do it. I gotta like block off that time and sit in the dark and the quiet without looking at any pictures like a weirdo. Yeah, that's me.
All right, so we have a question again from Nicola, and she asks, what was the last book you read and enjoyed?
I'm looking at my bookshelf.
I just finished A Girl on the Train yesterday.
Oh, was that good?
Yeah, I loved it. I really loved it. I'm first drafting right now on a couple of things, and I try not to read the same genre as what I'm writing. So I'm not reading any kind of young adult horror type of things right now, which is what I'm writing. So I'm only reading adult books right now, some things that are different than mine, like totally different subject and everything else. So Girl on the Train is my last read, and I loved it.
I've been doing less writing and more outdoorsy stuff, so I've been reading a lot, actually, and I just finished Making Pretty by Corianne Haydu, and I loved that. and I finished Adam Silvera's More Happy Than Not, and I loved that. And I'm in the middle of the second Raven Boys book, The Dream Thieves, which I started that forever ago, and I never finished it. And it's not because I didn't like it, it's just I got busy. I was drafting or something. But I'm in love with that, too. I've had really good reads in a row.
I've been staring at my shelf trying to figure out what I read last. It's horrible. But I have been recently going back, reading kind of classic books that I was assigned in high school, and I kind of hated, which is horrible to say, but I couldn't appreciate them then. Yeah, so I'm sort of relearning what I loved. So the one that recently surprised me the most was Catcher in the Rye. I remember not even being able to get through that book in high school, having to cliff notes my way through the test. And I am in love with Holden Caulfield now. I don't know why, I just love him. So that's been sort of really rewarding, realizing that it's not that I hated, my English teachers or my English classes. I was just, too immature to appreciate them at the time. So.
Well, that happens with everyone. I reread a book in 2000 that I read in 2008, and I hated it. I was like, what did I like about this book? Because my whole taste changed. I kind of matured, and I like different things now.
And so, too, life stuff happens to you, and you change, and then your book choices change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I was saying that I think that they do recommend great books in high school. Reading lists are amazing, but are you at the place where you can really appreciate it at that time? I'm not sure, because I did the same thing with Catcher in the Rye. I cliff noted it, didn't really like it, and then when I read it as an adult, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. So, yeah.
I did that with Dante's Inferno in English. I couldn't stand it, but now I think it's it's so amazing. The imagination to create it. And, so I think we all have that.
It's kind of sad, though, because, I went up until college, I thought I didn't like to read because I was given these books that sort of weren't, interesting to me. And so, in a way, I feel like I was done a disservice a little bit. I wish that I could have been, allowed to pick the books I read, for class, but what can you do? Can't do anything about it now, right?
Yeah.
You can go back and read all of them now.
Yeah. Right, exactly, which is what I'm doing.
Yes. So we have another question, and that is, how did you get into writing? Was it always a dream?
Who goes first?
You have to
How
go
about
first.
Beth? How about you go first?
Okay. Well, let me see, how did I get into writing? Well, I went to college for interior design, and I did that for about 5 years, and design school is much different than, the reality of being a designer. So I started doing photography, and I had my own photography business, which was great. I loved doing that, but it gave me a lot of free time. So I started reading, picking books, and right about the same time, it was around the time that Twilight came out. So YA was really blowing up, and there was a lot of really, great choices. So I was just reading a lot, and I had, luckily I had, the time to read a lot, and eventually I kind of started thinking well, I really love that book, but I would have done this differently, or I would read a series, and when it was over, I would want it to keep going. So I kind of started with writing sort of fan fiction-y sort of stuff. But from there, I just fell in love with YA and the community. I don't think it's, any other genre really has the community aspect that YA has, which I love. So I kind of started writing from there and haven't looked back. So I sort of, I was so excited that I realized I was a reader that I started writing. So.
Nice. What about you, Amy?
I always wanted to write. My first published work was when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
And it was a poem in the school paper about a turkey who didn't want to be eaten on Thanksgiving. So luckily that was not the pinnacle of my writing experience. I always wrote, but never thought that it was an option for a career, actually. So I always chose other things. For undergrad, I studied psychology. For graduate school, I did art history, which is writing and art are my two passions. So when I went back to grad school, I thought, okay, should I do writing for my master's or should I do art history? And I thought, well, if I want to work in art history, I have to have a master's, whereas you don't have to have a master's to write. So I chose that. I worked in the art world in New York for 8 years, and then when I was pregnant with my son, moved to the French countryside, my ex-husband's French, and found myself in the middle of nowhere with no job and a baby and no friends, and I had to do something. So I started writing a blog about living in the French countryside, and really, it was honestly, I didn't read any blogs. It was basically just an easy way to show my friends and family pictures and little stories of where I lived. And really quickly, it blew up, and I had lots and lots of followers, and some of them were writers, and they suggested that I make a book out of it. So I wrote a book called The Year in the Vines, and that got me my first agent, who is Beth's agent, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that book did not sell. The publishers all said, every American woman who moves to France or Italy writes a book about it. So there are too many books just like this on the market. But we really like Amy's writing style, so if she writes something else, fiction, send it back to us. And that was enough of a confirmation for me to keep on trying, and that's when I wrote my first fiction book, Die For Me. And I was really lucky that sold right away as soon as I sent it in. So I didn't think about writing for YA, but now that I am writing for YA, I'm so happy to be in that genre because, as Beth said, it's a great community to be in. And I am writing an adult book right now as well as YA, but that's mainly just because I get bored writing about one thing. I change genres kind of with every book I write. So, but anyway, that's how I got started, and luckily it hasn't stopped since then.
Nice. How many books have you published?
8. It's been 8 now.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks.
You know, if you would have asked me this question like 5 years ago, I would have said no, or even just like a year ago, like no, I didn't always want to be a writer because I dabbled in a lot of things for a long time because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I, did education, and I changed my major like 6 times. I was going to be a veterinarian and a doctor and a sign language teacher, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be an artist, and then I traveled a lot through college. So then I wanted to be like a UN ambassador. Like I had all these different plans, and I didn't start writing seriously until my early 20s, mid 20s, and I'm 30 now. Oh God, I'm 31 now. I forgot. So, so I think. Like, I would have told you no, and I kind of fell into it because I have always loved to read. I've always loved books, and I've always loved creativity. And everything I wanted to do has kind of, like, centered around learning and creativity and all that stuff. So I would have said no. Like, I didn't want to do this. But now that I am this, and I look back at my life, like, I can see that there were signposts always there. Like, I also published my first work at 7, but it was on construction paper, and it was called Flock Mice. About mice that ran from a cat that had a bat. Like, I don't know. And my dad wrote the title for me. But so I always wrote my own stories. I always illustrated my own stories. I kept a journal. I kept a live journal, the online blog when I was in college. So I have always written. I just didn't realize, kind of like Amy too, like you can actually do this for a living kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s, and my mom passed away, actually, and I took care of, and I still take care of my brother. He's an adult now, though, but he was a teenager at the time, and it was kind of like a really depressing very confusing time for me in my life, and that's when I turned back to my journal and I turned back to writing, and I realized that that's something that I have always done as comfort and as part of my creative expression. And so it turned into like my first book-length work, and then I didn't get an agent with that, and then I wrote Of Scars and Stardust, and that one, that's how I got my agent with that one, and that book sold, and I've written several others in between all those, but so now I'm realizing like, oh, like people actually like do this for a living. So it took me a while to get there though.
All right, so we have another question from Karen, and this is actually directed to Beth. So Beth, how would you describe Cassidy?
Sorry, I'm here. I had to plug in my laptop.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No. Okay. How would I describe Cassidy? She's sort of at a crossroads herself. Her parents are in the midst of a divorce, and it sort of blindsides her. So she's dealing with it in not very healthy ways, and so she finds herself she sort of puts herself in a situation where she's vulnerable to essentially dying, because which is not a spoiler. She's dead on page 1. But so she's not in a good place at all. So I mean, and that's one of the reasons in my brain why she doesn't just move on right after she dies. She has she's not in a very good place. So she sort of reaches Caleb, which is a childhood friend of hers, who is also not in a good place, and he sort of helps her, but in all the wrong ways. And then she dies, and she sort of doesn't get the opportunity to make things right. So a lot of it, I mean, in the book, it's a romance, so a lot of it is focused around that sort of aspect of, coming back for your true love and things like that, which is like one of my favorite themes to play around with. But she's very much, I mean, by the end of the book, for me, I mean, I can't read the end without tearing up, because I'm just so happy that she's finally gotten to a place of peace. Not necessarily of, moving on, the greater peace after you die, but just, for her own personal, well-being. I feel like through the book, she sort of, grieves herself, but also sort of comes to terms with stuff that was going on with her family.
I cried at the end too, by the way. I cried at the end of My Last Kiss as well.
Did you?
So it's not only the author that cried; it was a tearjerker, definitely.
Yeah. Amy blurbed for my book, which thank you.
Oh, nice.
So it's I don't know. It's one of those things where like it's one of those happy, like you're just so happy, but you're so sad because I don't know. It's a happy cry kind of for me anyway. Was it a happy cry for you, Amy?
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, it was one of those tears of kind of reconciliation in a way. You're like, you don't know what's happening, things aren't coming together, and then they do, and then you're like, oh, finally.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I thought that was wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, so we have another question. This is directed towards Amy. What can we expect from your upcoming novel, Inside the World or Die for Me? Does the story continue?
Yeah, it's actually kind of a compendium. This is an ebook that's coming out with Harper Impulse in February, and it's called Inside the World or Die for Me. And basically, it is, I guess the best way of saying it is a compendium. So I have all of the character profiles. I have a 4-level trivia game. I have deleted scenes, backstories, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's basically what my fans have been asking me since the series was over. They keep on coming back and asking, what happened to him? What happened to her?
Yeah.
Why is he like this? And so I'm basically just giving them the whole scoop in one book.
That sounds awesome, because I love those books. So that sounds awesome. I'm like fangirling out a little bit.
It's funny you say that they ask, because actually we have another question about the characters about your book, and that is, will there be anything about Georgia and Arthur in your upcoming novel in February?
Well, and this is the thing. So it's not actually a novel, but it is. It's a book. It's Inside the World of Die for Me. So there's not going to be. It definitely won't be new fiction. So I'm not going to be spinning any more of that story out. However, part of it is an epilogue that was written by Gaspar, saying what happens to everyone 5 years later, and in that she or he will be able to find out what happens to Georgia and Arthur. So they do not get married.
Spoiler alert.
And
They don't.
Georgia is not a simple person, so it is not a simple answer. I'll just say that.
Georgia's not the marrying type.
She's definitely not. She's not the kind of settling on one person type either. So.
All right, so we have another question that is, what advice would you give to a starter novelist? Amy, we'll start with you.
Okay. I have said the same thing for about 5 years. I kind of changed my mind, and then I went back, and but for a starter novelist, I think that there are two things that you should do: read a lot and write every day. I would be a hypocrite to say that I write every day now, but I definitely wrote every day when I was starting out, and that really helped me so much, because even when I didn't feel like it, I was blogging, but I was actually blogging articles about, wine, art, rebuilding a house, having babies in the countryside, being in a foreign country, and they were good, like, 2-page articles every single day for 4 years. And just having to sit down and train my brain to get into that writing mode, and it is like building up a muscle, and that's very unromantic. And it's not that exciting of an idea, but sitting down and forcing myself to do that really helped me write better. It didn't help me learn what to say, but it definitely helped me write better. And then I've heard some people say, "Oh, I don't like to read very much, but yeah, I want to write books." I'm like, what? I don't understand that. And I teach workshops for teenagers on writing. I teach 2 different things usually. One is creating characters, and the other subject is world building. And for creating characters in particular, but also for world building, I say you have to have this huge amount of story behind you in order to be able to kind of open the door to that other dimension where all the characters and all the stories are living, And so I think that it's really important to keep on reading, to read a lot, but also to write. And even if it's not something important, even if it's not writing the novel that you are supposed to be writing, just write, and especially if in the beginning, write every day.
All right, thank you. Andrea, what about you?
I've recently kind of changed my tune on this answer, because I would usually tell you stuff about persistence and keep trying, and you never know what's going to work out, and following your gut instinct too, while also learning craft so that you can trust your instinct. But, recently for me, I've noticed with my own writer friends, both published and not published, there's a lot of anxiety that goes into this business, and there's a lot of, I think, it is really competitive, and I think as writers, we work solo, so we know our own strengths and weaknesses really well, and we're always pushing ourselves to our limits, and there's not enough refilling the well. And I think what I would tell a beginning novelist now is, success at the expense of your friends and family and your health isn't success at all. So I know it's easy to get caught up in learning and trying and doing, and I do think what Amy says is a good point, like write a little bit every day, read a lot, but I think there's another element where we have to learn to take care of ourselves too, like mentally, physically, emotionally, because I know for me also, I'm not putting forth my best work when I feel like garbage. So taking care of myself first has been really important, because I think I've produced some of my best work when I care for myself in those ways. So I would tell anybody who wants to get into this is that, one, it's super intense, and because it's super intense, you need to make sure you take the time to take care of all of you so that you are actually enjoying the work that you're doing.
You have all these super healthy answers, Andrea.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be all like positive over here,
It is positive, it's good. My tip is, kind of what I did, which I think is I like to learn, or I don't know if I like it, but that's just the way I do it. I learn by doing. More often than not, I teach myself how to do stuff, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. But I always tell people when they first start to write is to go back and reread your favorite books, but read them like a writer. I think there's actually a book called Reading Like a Writer, and it just it's a different way of reading. You're no longer reading for enjoyment. You're sort of, every time, at the end of every chapter, you sort of pause to think, why did they end the chapter there? What's going on here? What do you think is going to happen next? And it really just gets your brain working the way a writer brain needs to work. And, and it's so funny now, like, any book I pick up, it kind of ruins it for me, because now I can, like, guess endings. Like Gone Girl, I'm not even kidding. On page 8, I knew, like, the entire plot. Because
I know, I did that with We Were Liars, and I was so disappointed. Yeah.
Yeah, so but like for me too, it's almost like a badge of honor. I'm like, wow, I'm like really reading like a writer right now. Like, that's a good thing. But I think if you can sort of start, not just enjoying your books, but also analyzing structurally how they're put together, why the author, gave this background to this character, or why is that guy so angry? There has to be a reason. Everything happens for a reason when you're writing, or it should anyways. So just sort of really using your time reading as an aspect of your writing as well.
So we have another question. A lot of questions from your fans. This is great. So thank you, everyone who's asking these questions. It's awesome of you. Hello. So the next one is, how did you come up with the names of your books?
I can go first.
Yeah.
Mostly because I was, there were times, like, because the story it's a non-linear plot line. So there were times where I was, like, ripping out my hair trying to figure out, what was going on, because it didn't happen in order. And, like, no joke, the title of my book was the only thing that kept me going sometimes, because I knew if I walked into a bookstore, I would pick up a book called My Last Kiss. I personally knew I would. It's just one of those titles that sort of jumps out at you if you're into that sort of thing. And that's sort of what the whole story revolves around, that, Cassidy's last kiss is ultimately what, one way or another is the reason why she's dead. So, and the whole book revolves around why she's dead. So it was sort of the perfect title. It was evocative. It was short. I read somewhere that, like, 3-word titles are, like, the best titles that you can have, because the brain works in 3s. So it just sort of had all the elements. I know I had another title before My Last Kiss, but I've sort of, like, selectively blocked it out of my brain. I can't remember what it was. But I mean, that's what it was. I mean, for me, the title has to be, because I know, like, at a bookstore, my book sits there all alone. I'm not there to tell people why they should buy it. So I know the title has to jump out at you, and it has to be evocative. And so I'm really lucky I got to keep my title, because I might have cried if they told me I had to rename it.
I'll go next. For Die For Me, I had a title that I really, really wanted, because it meant things on several levels, and I just thought it was great. Mind you, I had not read any young adult since I had been a young adult. So I didn't know what was trendy, and I didn't know what people were doing or whatever, and I had called it Sleepwalking. And my editor's like, that's the most boring title I've ever heard. But for me, my revenants sleep. There's this whole thing about them sleeping for 3 days while they're coming back to life. And my main character, Kate, her parents had died, and she was just going through life like she was sleepwalking. And it was a meaningful title. Well, it wasn't attractive enough of a title for my editor. So they chose Die for me, and I tried to fight it for a while, and they finally won. And so once we had that, the other ones came easily. I would say for the middle one, it was Until I Die. And I brought that up. I said, I think it should be Until I Die. And they're like, no, we don't want that. And then they read the book, and they're like, we think it should be Until I Die. I was like, oh, really? Huh, that's a good idea. I like that. And it was the same with the last one, If I Should Die. And so those kind of worked themselves out. And now I like the titles. I was just so stuck on that first one that I was disappointed. With After the End, I just called it Juno forever because that's the main character's name, and I honestly could not think of a name. I thought of so many titles, and none of them seemed to be attractive enough. One was After the War. There's one problem that probably the other writers here know as well, which is if a book has come out with the same title in the last couple of years, you can't use it, or you shouldn't use it. And those are always the ones I come up with. So again, my editor came up with the title After the End. My next series, which is going to be announced in a few weeks, is I had come up with the name Evernight. And apparently somebody else just had a book last year called Evernight. So it will now be called Dreamfall. So I end up not choosing any of my titles. That's the answer on that one.
This book was named The Diaries of Ella Graham when I wrote it, because it's about Ella's diaries play an important, pivotal role in this whole mystery about what happened to her and if the wolves are real or not. And then my editor, again, did not like that, just like Amy's editor. And then something similar happened where there's a line at the beginning of one of the chapters where Claire says, where do you begin looking for a girl made of scars and stardust? And she's talking about her sister. And I suggested like something from that line, and then they said no. And then they said, how about of scars and stardust? And I was like, cool, I like that. That sounds good. So, same thing. And I love that title. I'm really glad it ended up that way, and I think they wanted to choose that too because this is like I write like lyrically. I write very flowy, kind of. I'm long-winded basically, and so I think that kind of captures the story and the essence and the way I write in it. So I'm happy with it.
Awesome. So another question is, excuse me. What could you see yourself doing if you weren't a writer?
Who do you want to go first?
How about Andrea?
I don't know. This is the one where I'm like, I don't know. I'm interested in so many different things, so I know I could find something else to do. I'm like a chronic learner. Like I love to learn about anything and everything. Like I bake cakes for fun. Like I sew. Like I make mixed media art. I love to travel. My husband and I always hike and do like rock climb and do outdoor like camping and stuff. So like I don't know, I could be a park ranger. I could be an artist. Like I could pick something else, but I think there's a lot of power in choice, right? Like I think any of us could be okay with a number of different careers, but I think that when you pick something, you really are making a commitment to it and to yourself to become better at it. So like since I've chosen that I'm going to focus on writing and kind of let everything else become a watered down hobby, then it's hard for me to even envision what anything else could be. Like this is it for me, basically. Like I don't even know I said to my husband the other day, I was really frustrated, like, I think I'll just like stop writing, and he gave me one of like these, like, okay, that's not gonna happen because it's part of who I am now. So I don't know, like, I guess I could do anything, but I don't want to.
Mm-hmm. All right, how about Bethany?
Well, like I said before, I mean, I have a degree in interior design. I've done photography professionally. I really love doing photography, but running your own business, it doesn't really, I mean, it was hard for me to go from like writing mode to business mode to, weekends doing photography mode. So my brain was being pulled in a lot of different directions. But I mean, everything I've always done has been creative. Um, my parents, but my mom especially, has always really emphasized that. My brother's an artist, so I sort of grew up, drawing on anything and everything. But he's a professional artist, so I never thought my drawing was good enough. So I sort of, went around different ways, kind of always storytelling in everything I was doing. But kind of like Andrea said, like there were little, roadblocks along the way. Like I should have known I'm a writer, but for a while I thought it was movies, which, I still love movies. And then I thought, well, I'll be a TV writer. And, then I didn't want to move to California. So, I mean, my dream job still would be to be a screenwriter. I just am so deeply in love with movies. I would just love to do that. But I'm very introverted as well. So writing fiction is like the perfect job for me because I can literally go to work and just sit alone in a room and sort of have fun with my thoughts. So, I mean, writing is it fits my personality perfectly. I mean, the only thing I would change is, to make it easier to sell a book and make a book come out quicker. And I'm pretty impatient, so that's the only part that I sort of have difficulty with. But it would definitely be something creative, whatever it was.
Nice.
Yeah, I've worked in a few different worlds too, and I don't think I would ever go back to art. At the end of my art career, I was buying and selling paintings, and that's a lot of fun. And the fun for me is that I'm really good at figuring out who did a painting. I did mainly 19th and early 20th century. And so I can figure out signatures that nobody else can figure out, and that type of thing. So that for me was the fun part. The business part sucked. I hate doing anything with money, numbers, whatever. I can't stand it. So I can't see myself really going back to that because I was so happy not to have to think about money and selling things and whatever else. But yeah, I can't imagine doing anything but write. I really enjoy teaching writing workshops, especially for teenagers, and I can imagine doing more of that perhaps. But I can't imagine ever stopping writing. I could perhaps add something in, and it would be nice. I'm not really an introvert, like Beth just said that she was. I need to be by myself some of the time, but I really need people. And that's one of the hard things for me about writing, is all of the time spent by myself. And so I can imagine perhaps adding something in where I would be with people, either working as a journalist and seeing other people, or I won't even say well, yes, I will. I was looking at this video game company that needs story writers, and that sounds like a lot of fun to me too. So I might be talking to them sometime soon about doing that, just because I'd be interacting with more people and not just with me and my head and my imaginary characters who you end up spending a lot of time with, and that might not be the best for your mental health. But yeah, so that would be my answer.
Juno would make a great video game.
What's that?
Juno would make a great video game. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to hopefully be talking to this video game company about Die For Me and After the End. So,
Really?
But it would be fun to take somebody else's ideas and turn them into kind of a workable storyline as well. So.
Like a game, like an iPhone game?
The place that I'd like to talk to is mobile games.
Yeah, mobile, not just iPhone, just smartphone. Smartphone games. Okay. So the next one is, where do you get your big inspirations for your book?
Should I start?
Yes.
Okay. My big inspirations. I have a box with all these papers in it, where I've scribbled down ideas for books, and I now have about probably 30 workable ideas of things that I know would work as an entire novel. And if I could clone myself about 10 times, I would be so happy, because I'm never going to have enough time to write all of these. So for me, coming up with the ideas, it is the easiest part, actually. And I have so many ideas for short stories and for novels. Where the ideas come from, like, who knows? I think that's the strangest question, but I ask myself that question. It comes from, I mean, I told my teenagers that I teach sometimes that it's like you open this door, and you're looking out into this alternate universe, and all this stuff is going on, and you just take one thing and you appropriate it, and then it's your responsibility to translate that well and to transcribe it well for your readers. So for me, I don't know. I open that door. I don't know how it opens. It's not like I read something in the news and I'm like, ooh, this would make a good book. I just, it comes to you. I love Stephen King's idea in his book on writing, which is my favorite book on writing, that the stories are like fossils that are already out there, and they are waiting to be uncovered, and it is the author's job to uncover those fossils and to do the best they can to show them to kind of the reading public. So for me, the stories are all out there, either behind that door or as a fossil or whatever else, and I just stumble upon them. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know is my answer.
All right.
I'm with Amy on that too. I feel this exact same way. Like, I feel like there are fully formed ideas out there, and it's my job to listen basically for them. And listening for me involves having experiences. You know, I get a lot of my ideas when we go out in the wilderness, or we hike, or whatever, or we do something new, or I try something new, or I just am out there trying new things and discovering things and going for a walk even in a different part of the neighborhood. And so I try to, I mean, it's not like I go for a walk and I'm like, today I'm going to get some inspiration. Like, it's just living your life, and then they kind of come up that way. And so, and ideas for me usually come in parts. Like, I am writing a magical realism now that involves like a forest and a broken compass, and a forest that's actually like alive and like an entity kind of thing, and sinister stuff goes on in there. But so like that kind of came from my love of nature, but then I also was really thinking about like female friendships and that strong bond, and so then I kind of threw that in the pot, and then, like, you know, other things will pop up where I'm like, I want to throw in some lilies or something. Like, you know, you just throw things in that you like or that you find interesting over and over again. And so, yeah, like Amy, I truly don't know where they come from, but like, I think that it's my job to listen, and for me, the best way I found to listen is by doing stuff, basically.
I get a lot of my ideas from songs. I love watching music videos. I think it's a really underappreciated art form. There's so many cool music videos, and there's a lot left to the imagination when you're watching a music video, because, you know, they're sort of limited in what they can do in 3 minutes or however long the song is. So I get a lot of ideas from that, sort of watching the video and filling in the blanks of, you know, my interpretation of what that meant, whatever, you know, the filmmaker was trying to convey. So I get a lot of ideas from songs, and I'm sort of freakishly, like, I memorize song lyrics crazy. I couldn't tell you what 12 times 4 is, but I can tell you, like, all the words to at least 100 songs. So song lyrics, again, there's a lot of space to fill in the blanks. So I do a lot of I'm inspired by, you know, other, other writers, TV shows, any sort of like small medium where there's space to fill in the blanks. I love filling in those blanks and figuring out what the end was, because you kind of don't get the end in songs and things like that. I also get a lot of ideas. I sort of see the world different and darker than most people. So, like, I mean, a regular person will look at something and think one thing, and I think, like, oh, that would be a perfect murder weapon. No one would ever guess. So, I'm constantly flipping reality that way, so I get a lot of random ideas that way, too. But I'm the same way. I have notebooks full of just, like, jotted down one-line ideas, and if I had 10 of me, maybe half of them would get written. But, I mean, the hard part for me is picking which projects to work on right now. Because I'm in the position where, I have to write a book and then I have to sub it again. So you kind of go out there, you sort of free fall into, the abyss, just hoping that, editors love what you've been working on for a year as much as you do. So that's always the hardest part for me is, because I have so many ideas, picking one, which one to run with. Right now I'm sort of running with 3 at the same time, so that's never good, but hopefully one will stick.
Very nice. So we're at the end of our chat. Nicola says, I want to thank you for taking the time out to do this question and answer. We really appreciate it. Which I do too. Everybody here really appreciates the time that you're putting in for this, so thank you. So I'd like to tell everybody, all of the viewers, that these 3 amazing women are giving away their book. So Amy Plum is giving away After the End and Until the Beginning. Andrea is giving away of Scars and Stardust, and Bethany is going to give away My Last Kiss. And in order to win the giveaway, this whole chat room is going to become a YouTube video. And when it becomes a YouTube video, I would like you to comment on that video with a way to contact you if you've won. So it can be email, it can be Twitter, it can be YouTube, mailing system, which, by the way, doesn't always work, so be careful with that. So that's really it. Just comment if you win. I'll contact you on that way. And that's it. And it ends in a week from now, which is September 7th, September 6th. I don't know, next Monday. That's it. So I want to thank you ladies again so much for being here and doing this. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel.
So much fun.
Yes. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.